You're listening to the Mind Over Murder podcast.
My name is Bill Thomas. I'm a writer, consulting producer, and now podcaster. I am now trying to use my experience as the brother of a murder victim to help other victims of violent crime. I'm working on a book on the unsolved Colonial Parkway murders, and I'm the co-administrator of the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook group, together with Kristin Dilley.
My name is Kristin Dilley. I'm a writer, a researcher, a teacher, and a victims advocate, as well as the social media manager and co-administrator for the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page with my partner in crime, Bill Thomas. Welcome to Mind Over Murder. I'm Kristin Dilley.
And I'm Bill Thomas.
We're continuing with our coverage of the Long Island serial killer, or LISK, or if you prefer, the Gilgo Beach killer. I happen to like LISK. Bill, what's your preferred term?
I'm actually leaning towards Gilgo Beach killer because those are the cases we seem to have the strongest connection forensically and electronically.
Someone on our Mind Over Murder Facebook page made the comment, do we think that law enforcement is going with the assumption that he's the only killer of people on Long Island, or do they think that maybe there are others?
There's been a long-standing theory that there could be multiple killers on Long Island. At this point, law enforcement investigating Rex Heuermann have not indicated that they suspect that he may be responsible for all 11 victims in the Long Island serial killer, or LISK, case. I think it remains to be seen. It's still possible that there could be another killer or killers involved in this decades-long series of murders along Long Island.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. One of our loyal listeners over on Mind Over Murder did mention that, and they said media and law enforcement don't seem to be addressing this issue. If Heuermann is only responsible for the 4 that we're aware of, including Maureen Brainerd Barnes, what about the other victims? I definitely think that's something that will be addressed a little bit later.
There's an intriguing discussion going on some of the sites, and I've been a participant in some of these discussions, although I mostly just read and observe. There's discussion, as you'll get into in a few minutes, about some of the searching that Rex Heuermann did on his various cell phones, including the burner phones. It appears that he discarded these burner phones after each of the 4 victims, so it's actually fairly easy to tell when a murder has taken place. He would get rid of the cell phone and get a new one. In some of his internet searches, as highlighted in this document, he was looking for information about his victims, even after their deaths, and also looking for information about their families. It's very disturbing. What some folks are mentioning was he only searching for information about these 4 victims. What about the other 7 people who were murdered? It's a very interesting question. As we talked about in our last episode, though, what's provided in a document like this bail application is only part of what law enforcement, investigators, and later prosecutors will have to work with. Very interesting question as to whether Heuermann may have searched for any of the other victims' names in the total of 11 victims who were killed over the years.
I think that's going to be very interesting. And hopefully, as you said, this is going to come out the longer that the investigation goes on. We want to jump back into the case against Rex Heuermann as laid out in this application for bail that was filed with the Suffolk County Court and ultimately was published in the New York Times on July 14th, which, by the way, was my dad's 80th birthday. We covered in our last episode the murders of all 4 women, and that does include Maureen Brainerd Barnes. We started laying out the information about the burner cell phones. We're going to continue with that discussion, and if we need to take more time to get into this bail application, we certainly will over another episode. But let's go ahead and jump back in. And for anybody who has decided to open up the document, we are currently at the bottom of page 8, and we're going to continue on from there. the subsection that we're looking at now, very interestingly, is titled Records Establish that Defendant Heuermann's Wife was out of New York for the disappearances of Bartholomew, Waterman, and Costello. Significantly, travel records show that on July 8, 2009, Defendant Heuermann's wife departed the U.S. for Iceland. On August 18, 2009, Defendant Heuermann's wife returned to the United States. Consequently, Defendant Heuermann's wife was out of the country during the time of Melissa Bartholomew's disappearance. Based upon cellular telephone billing records, on June 4, 2010, the cellular telephone subscribed to by Defendant Heuermann's wife traveled from New York to Maryland. On June 8, 2010, the cellular telephone subscribed to by Defendant Heuermann's wife returned to New York from Maryland. Consequently, based upon cellular telephone records, the cellular telephone subscribed to by Defendant Heuermann's wife was out of New York State during the time of Megan Waterman's disappearance. And based upon cellular telephone billing records, on August 28, 2010, the cellular telephone subscribed to by Defendant Heuermann's wife traveled from New York to New Jersey. On September 5, 2010, the cell phone subscribed to by his wife returned to New York from New Jersey. Consequently, the cellular telephone subscribed to by Defendant Heuermann's wife was out of New York State during the time of Amber Costello's disappearance.
It should be noted that his wife is from Iceland originally. It appears that she would take 4 to 6 week long vacations in Iceland to spend time with family and then return. It's very striking that these murders seem to line up with these time frames when his wife is either in Maryland or on the Jersey Shore for a week or so at a time, or during these lengthy 6-week breaks that his wife would take when she returned to her family's home in Iceland.
I think it will be interesting to see whether or not he committed the murders in his house, in that vault that investigators were looking into. And certainly they were using ground-penetrating radar in the yard outside of the house. I'm wondering if during the time she went on these trips, he took the opportunity to take these women back to the soundproof vault and complete his murders there. That's my working theory at the moment. We'll see if that bears out.
Very disturbing, nonetheless.
The next section is titled Cellular Billing Records for the Cell Phone of Rex Heuermann. And so this is continuing the work that the CAST FBI team does. And CAST stands for
the Cellular Analysis Survey Team. And CAST was created to put together a highly trained team of experts at FBI headquarters whose specialty was analyzing cell phones and the movement thereof.
So this does continue the work that CAST is doing on the case. So this is about cellular billing records. During the times of the disappearances and murders of the victims, Defendant Heuermann owned an architectural business located in Midtown Manhattan. And this business was the named subscriber of Heuermann's cell phone, which was active during the times of the victims' disappearances and subscribed to Heuermann's home address in Massapequa Park. Although cell site records from that time period no longer existed, investigators obtained cellular billing records, which show general location information for Heuermann's cell phone. A review of these records, as well as Heuermann's American Express records, showed numerous instances where Heuermann was located in the same general location as the burner cell phones used to contact victims Bartholomew, Waterman, and Costello, as well as the use of Brainerd Barnes and Bartholomew's cell phones when they were used to check voicemail and make taunting phone calls after the women disappeared. Significantly, investigators could find no instance where Heuermann was in a separate location from these other cell phones when said communication event occurred.
That's pretty powerful. So Heuermann's phone, the one he used for business and family contact, would be with him while he's using these burner phones. Investigators can find no instance where they're in separate locations. It never occurred to him to leave his regular cell phone at home or in his truck.
similar to what happened with Brian Koberger in the Idaho 4 case. These guys are not as smart as they think they are. I want to make note of 2 footnotes here. One footnote reads, neither cellular telephone billing records nor travel and financial records could be obtained for defendant Heuermann's wife for 2007, as such records were no longer available due to retention policies. Therefore, it is undetermined at this time defendant Heuermann's wife was traveling out of state during the time of Maureen Brainerd Barnes' disappearance and murder. So they can't track it down, but I'm going to assume, and maybe I'm making a false assumption, but I'm going to assume that probably the same pattern holds.
I would think so. Now, I'm hoping that now that they've gone public and arrested Heuermann, they will probably be looking for additional information regarding Heuermann's wife in terms of her credit card spending or other records that might indicate where she was at a particular time. I know they're trying to connect Heuermann to 4 homicides in the Gilgo Beach 4. I think they'll continue to look at options where it might be possible to sew those threads together. As they mentioned in the document, there were 300 different subpoenas issued in this case, and I'm sure there will be more on an ongoing basis to try to build a strong case against Heuermann and give a clear indication, if possible, where his wife and his wife's cell phone may have been located.
Yeah, there's another footnote here that does read, unfortunately, cell site records for the burner cell phone used to contact Ms. Brainerd Barnes were not obtained at the time of her disappearance and now no longer exist. So that's why they're having a harder time connecting her to him. They're missing records here. Okay, so it says that investigators could find no instance when Heuermann was in a separate location from these other cell phones when such a communication event occurred. For example, on July 10th, 2009, the last day Melissa Barthelemy was seen alive, both the burner phone and defendant Heuermann's phone were in the area of Massapequa and traveled together toward New York City. Thereafter, both Miss Barthelemy's phone and Heuermann's phone traveled eastbound toward Massapequa. So he's like holding on to these phones and taking them with him. On July 14th, 2009, at approximately 7:15 p.m., cell site records indicate the burner phone used to contact Ms. Barthelemy prior to her disappearance had activity in Manhattan. On this same date, between approximately 6:58 p.m. and 7:22 p.m., billing records from Heuermann's cell phone also showed call locations in New York City. So he's in the same place as her phone. Following Ms. Barthelemy's disappearance on July 17, 2009, at approximately 12:40 p.m., a male caller used the Barthelemy phone to contact Ms. Barthelemy's family. The Barthelemy phone was located in New York City at this time, specifically attached to a cellular tower located at 4 Penn Plaza, which is approximately 2,372 feet or 0.45 miles from Heuermann's then office space, which at the time was located at 19 West 36th Street, New York. See illustration below. There's a nice little illustration there. On this same date at approximately 1:45 p.m., billing records from Heuermann's phone also show a call location in New York City. So you've got a nice illustrated map here showing the victim's phone in green, Rex Heuermann's office in blue, and showing like how close to each other they are.
Interesting, too, that he tried to restrict the length of some of these calls. That call is 1 minute and 6 seconds long. He may have been thinking about how phones can be tracked and how his location could be traced. And because here he is making calls on the victim's phone after her death. Although law enforcement would not have been aware of the fact that a murder had taken place, he is taking a significant risk by using Ms. Barthelemy's cell phone to contact her family. He may live to regret those taunting phone calls.
Yeah. On July 22nd, 2009, at 6:51 p.m., cell site records indicate the burner cell phone had activity in New York City, specifically attached to a cellular tower located at 19 West 34th Street, which is approximately 872 feet or 0.16 miles from defendant Heuermann's then office space, which at the time was located at 19 West 36th Street, New York, New York. On this same date at approximately 5:12 p.m., billing records from Heuermann's cell phone listed a cell located in New York City. So same thing, the outgoing call in this instance was only 5 seconds long, but they've got all of these things nicely tracked and traced and illustrated. It's really good police work. I know that we said that with the Koberger case, and that holds true here as well. Cass does an amazing job.
There's been some coverage in newspaper and other coverage that indicated with these taunting phone calls that sometimes the killer would be looking to reach the victim's sister. He was very focused on her. I think she was 16 years old at the time. If other family members answered the phone, he would hang up and then he would try again later because he was trying to get a hold of the younger sister so he could engage with her in a very sick way. These phone calls that only last 5 seconds, if other family members picked up the call, he would jump off the call and hang up.
So the next couple of pages really dig into the particulars of these taunting calls. So on July 23rd, 2009, at 6:42 p.m., a male caller used the Barthélemy phone to contact her family. The Barthélemy phone was located in New York City at this time, specifically attached to a cell tower located at 275 West 39th Street, which is approximately 872 feet or 0.16 miles from Heuermann's then office space. On July 23rd, between approximately 8:29 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., the burner's cell phone had activity in New York City. Later on the same date, at approximately 11:05 p.m., billing records from Heuermann's cell phone listed a call located in Jamaica, Queens. And again, we've got more detailed illustrations and maps here. On August 5th, 2009, between approximately 6:50 p.m. and 7:11 p.m., a male caller used the Barthélemy phone to contact Ms. Barthélemy's family. During said time period, the Barthélemy phone utilized the following cellular phone towers in New York City, which are 2,230 to 3,280 feet from Heuermann's then office space. On the same date, during a similar time frame between approximately 6:46 and 7:05, Heuermann's cell phone listed billing locations in New York City. And so for this one, it looks like he's walking around. Maybe I'm trying to interpret, how is he on all these different cell phone towers? It looks like maybe he's just walking up and down the block, killing time and making phone calls. Does that seem that way to you, Bill?
The way a cell phone works, it's a radio, which most of us seem to forget. A cell phone will switch from one tower to another as you move around. I think what Heuermann was doing was leaving his office and going out and walking around, using the cell phone to make these calls, some of which are quite disturbing, either at lunch or just telling his colleagues, I'm going out for a walk or whatever, or running an errand, and then going out and using the cell phone while walking around. Obviously, he does not want to be overheard making these phone calls, whether he's making a date with a sex worker for future illegal activity or using the victim's cell phones to make these horrible, taunting phone calls.
Now, this is interesting, too. On August 10th, based upon subpoenaed travel documents, Heuermann departed for Iceland, so I'm assuming to join his wife, and all phone activity for the Barthélemy phone stopped. So as soon as he leaves the country, the phone goes inactive. On August 18th, 2009, Heuermann returned from Iceland, and phone activity for the Barthélemy phone resumed the next day. So again, we've got lots of correlation here.
Yeah.
On August 19th, 2009, at approximately 7:23 p.m., a male caller used the Barthélemy phone to contact Ms. Barthélemy's family. Cell site records indicate that the Barthélemy phone was located at New York City at this time, specifically attached to a cell tower located at 249 West 36th Street, which is approximately 2,831 feet or 0.53 miles from Heuermann's then office space. On the same date, before and after the calls of Barthélemy's family, at approximately 7:16 and 7:28, billing records from Heuermann's cell phone list calls located in New York City. So it's there and he's there. They're doing a great job showing they're both in the same place at the same time, and little maps to go along with each one. And then the last of the calls here on August 26th, between approximately 11:29 a.m. and 11:34 a.m., a male caller used the Barthélemy phone to contact Miss Barthélemy's family. It's like he's at work at this point.
Right.
That's brazen. According to cell site records, the Barthélemy phone was located in New York City at this time, specifically attached to the cell phone tower located at 4 Penn Plaza, which is approximately 2,230 feet or 0.42 miles from Heuermann's then office space. On this same date, at approximately 11:38 a.m., billing records for Heuermann's cell phone list a call location of New York City. They're sewing all the threads together. They're building this tapestry.
You're listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. We're back here at Mind Over Murder.
The next section is titled Additional Burner Phones and Online Account Activity Linked to Defendant Heuermann. As described herein, over the course of the comprehensive investigation of Defendant Heuermann, investigators located a number of online accounts and burner cell phones linked to Defendant Heuermann, but which were held by him in fictitious names and used for illicit activities. American Express records obtained via subpoena revealed recurring Google Pay payments made by Defendant Heuermann to Tinder, an online dating and geosocial networking application used to find dates or hookups within a user's immediate vicinity. Never heard Tinder described that way, but cool. That is exactly what it is. Records were then obtained from Tinder, which revealed that the Tinder profile was set up in the name Andy. Heuermann's middle name is Andrew, with links to a burner cell phone, number redacted, subscribed in the fictitious name of Andrew Roberts using an email account, also redacted. The redacted account was established with AOL in January 15th, 2011, in the fictitious name John Springfield with an Astoria, Queens, New York zip code using another burner cell phone. Redacted email account, which records show has no named subscriber. Who uses AOL anymore? I'm sorry. I'm going to judge him on the fact that he's got an AOL account. I would judge him for having a Hotmail account too if he did.
I will add that I have the same AOL address that I have from the very beginning of the internet for a different reason, which is that I've tried to make myself easy to find in my sister Kathy Thomas's case, the Colonial Parkway murders. So I've never dropped my original AOL account, even though I use Gmail primarily, and I've used lots of different work emails over the years. I wanted to remain consistent for all of those years so that if someone looked at some old article or a comment, I used to comment quite frequently on online discussions of the Colonial Parkway murders, and I would sign Bill Thomas, brother of Kathy Thomas, Colonial Parkway murders, and many times I'd actually include my AOL email address to make myself easy to find. So some people hang on to AOL accounts for different reasons.
That I totally understand in your case. I feel like, I don't know, I can taunt a serial killer and it'll be fine. Nothing terrible is going to happen to me.
It's a bit old school, I will admit.
It is old school, yes. Okay, back to the document. Records obtained from Verizon showed that Defendant Heuermann's cell phone was used December 11th, 2022 for a period of over 3 hours to access the fictitious AOL account, also redacted. Similarly, records obtained from T-Mobile showed that the burner cell phone, redacted, was used on multiple dates, including November 8th, 2022, to access this account. A review of cell records for these two additional burner cell phones revealed that both cell phones were used extensively between 2021 and 2023 for prostitution-related contacts, either with sex workers or massage parlors. In addition, cell site warrants for these burner cell phones revealed that just like the burner cell phones Defendant Heuermann used to contact the victims prior to their disappearances, these additional burner cell phones had frequent cell site activity in Midtown Manhattan and Massapequa Park. Specifically, the records revealed that both these burner cell phones consistently had activity on the cellular towers that provided coverage to Defendant Heuermann's residence in Massapequa Park and his business in New York City. Legal process served on Google seeking records or accounts associated with the device identifiers of these additional burner cell phones revealed a connection to yet another burner or junk email account, namely redacted, here after the blank email account. So it's all been redacted here, and that's fine. Google records further indicate that the blank email account was subscribed in the fictitious name Thomas Hawk. A search warrant revealed that I'm just going to call it the Hawk email account. The Hawk email account associated with Berner's cell phone was used to conduct thousands of searches related to sex workers, sadistic, torture-related pornography, and child pornography, including, there's a super long list, all of which is redacted.
I'm going to add something here, which is I have looked up this bail document elsewhere. And if you're interested, those redacted sections that Kristin mentioned are available. The New York Times made a decision to redact them, which is fine. If you are curious to see just a sample of the thousands of searches that he conducted, some of which are quite disturbing. They are available online. If you look for this document, you can find it quite easily. It was loaded up to documentcloud.org and is available in an unredacted format as well.
I'm going to continue with the New York Times here. The email account was also used to conduct in excess of 200 searches between March 2022 and June 2023 related to active and known serial killers, the specific disappearances and murders of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, and the investigation into their murders. So he kept going on and asking questions like, why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Interesting for you, buddy.
He displayed a tremendous amount of interest in the progress of the investigation into the Long Island serial killer, as well as the names of his victims and even the relatives of his victims. He would also search for things like cops launch Gilgo Beach Homicide Investigation Task Force. So he was following this very closely.
The email account was also used to search for a number of podcasts and or documentaries regarding this investigation. Then you've got some redacted information here. We've been told by the FBI that very likely the perpetrator in the Colonial Parkway murders follows Bill on social media and probably watched our TV series, Lover's Lane Murders. It is very possible they listen to this podcast. This is just an interesting little bit of information that I see that serial killers do, in fact, follow their press.
They seem to.
Very disturbing. Significantly, defendant Heuermann also searched for and viewed articles concerning the very task force that was investigating him. Now, there's two pictures down here showing a search result for Long Island serial killer. And as Bill said, that opens up to two articles, one of which is from True Crime News from Oxygen, called "The Case is Solvable. New Task Force Aims to Solve the Long Island Serial Killer Case." And a second one from the Long Island Press stating cops launch Gilgo Beach Homicide Investigation Task Force. So that is just a sample of the things that he was looking for, very interestingly. I've always found it a little disconcerting to know that serial killers do, in fact, follow their press, but I guess it's not surprising. I still find it maybe not weird, but I don't like the idea that there is a serial killer out there in this case, the Colonial Parkway Murders case, that is probably listening to our podcast. I find that a little weird, but it is what it is. A search warrant conducted on the fictitious AOL account further revealed selfie photographs that appeared to have been taken by defendant Rex Heuermann of himself. See below, and you've got two little selfies of him. One of him doing the old, let me look in the mirror and hold up the phone and get a photo of myself holding my phone while I'm taking my selfie in the mirror. He's got one of those. And then they have one where he looks relatively normal, not ogreish, not the way that he looks in his mugshot, but he's got two selfies that are listed right there on this bail application. These photos were sent to other people to solicit and arrange for sexual activity, further linking Heuermann to the fictitious email account and the burner cell phone used to establish the account. So two different photos there of the Long Island serial killer. Alleged Long Island serial killer. I'm sorry, we need to make sure he's given his due. Next, defendant Rex Heuermann was further linked to the burner cell phone because on May 19th, 2023, defendant Heuermann was observed by law enforcement via video and field surveillance at a cell phone store in Midtown Manhattan and purchased additional minutes which were added to this burner cell phone. See images below. And so you've got an image of Heuermann at this Midtown Manhattan cell phone store. polo shirt and sunglasses.
This also clearly indicates that by May 19th, 2023, which is only a couple of months ago now, he was under field surveillance. This isn't just a store camera recording him walking into the store. He's also being followed by law enforcement.
So you've got 3 photographs of him entering the store, interacting with an employee, and buying minutes for his phone. Analysis of the AOL account also led to the discovery of another email account hereinafter the name-redacted Google account used on February 14th, 2021 to send an image of a prostitute from upstate New York between 2 of Heuermann's secret email accounts. Further investigation revealed that the Google account was created on February 14th, 2021 using the burner cell phone as the user's phone number and SMS recovery number, and subscribed in the fictitious name Andy Roberts, the same fake name listed to the target Tinder profile and burner cell phone, as well as the same alias utilized by defendant Heuermann in communication with numerous potential sex partners responding to his advertisements for sex, and using the fictitious birthday of August 6, 1972, which corresponds to the digital ending of the burner account. In addition, Google provided IP address information for the user's acceptance of the terms of service, which revealed that the terms of service were accepted on February 14th, 2021 from IP address, redacted. Significantly, records were obtained from Altice, doing business as Optimum, which is an internet services provider, indicating that the IP address at defendant Heuermann's home address was also, and then they redact that as well.
But it's the same number.
Same number, yeah.
For those of us that don't think about this very much, all of us have internet protocol addresses. I'm looking at 2 computers here while we're talking, and they both have discrete numbers. This isn't something you can erase unless you're going through a virtual private network or taking other additional steps. Your computer is sending out its address to every other computer on the World Wide Web it makes contact with, and indicating this is my number.
All right, we're getting to the end of the cell phone information here, so let me wrap this up. Moreover, based upon SCPD records for the official website gilgonews.com, a website maintained by the SCPD to disperse news pertaining to this investigation, defendant Heuermann's home IP address was used on May 23rd, 2020 and July 3rd, 2020 to access the official news concerning this investigation. Records obtained from JetBlue also showed that the same IP address was also utilized to book flights for defendant Heuermann and his wife in 2018. When analyzing the usage of all devices and accounts used by defendant Heuermann, there appears to be a clear pattern wherein Heuermann used burner phones and the burner junk email addresses to 1. Contact sex workers and sex partners, to conduct extensive searches related to sex and prostitution, violent, sadistic, and child pornography, and seek online information about the authorities investigating his crimes. These burner cell phones and email accounts with fictitious identities were used in an effort to conceal Heuermann's true identity, conceal his criminal activity, unlawfully proposition sex workers, and attempt to monitor the investigation of his crimes.
They've done an incredible job of building the case electronically. Their analysis, I think, will be very powerful should this case proceed to a trial. This will be very beneficial in showing the movement of the 4 victims, the cell phones they used in conducting their business, and then the use of the 4 burner phones, each one disposed of after he killed one of his victims, all of the internet search, and then the very strange linkage whereby his regular cell phone was always at the same physical locations as his burner cell phone and the cell phone of the 2 victims that he used after the fact to taunt their families.
So now we're going to get into the DNA of it all. And the next section of this is labeled DNA analysis of hairs recovered from the examination of the victims' bodies. This is definitely something that you can go online and find the unredacted copy of. The New York Times, for whatever reason, felt that it needed to redact a lot of this information, and that's fine. During the course of this investigation, each of the 4 victims' bodies were examined by a forensic scientist with the Suffolk County Crime Laboratory. There is about 3/4 of a page of redacted information and then another, say, half page in addition to that. But under the heading of Forensic Laboratory number 1, It states, in or about July 2022, Forensic Lab 1 was able to determine that each of the aforementioned female hairs recovered on the 3 victims each belonged to a female individual in mitochondrial haplogroup K1C2, and that this female was not any of the victims. On or around July 21, 2022, an undercover SCPD detective recovered 11 bottles from a trash receptacle that had been left out for collection in front of the residence of defendant Rex Heuermann. The Suffolk County Crime Lab took swabs of said bottles, which were subsequently sent to Forensic Lab 1 for DNA testing. Based on these new submissions, on or about February 24, 2023, Forensic Lab 1 was able to conclude that one of the DNA profiles generated from the aforementioned bottles taken from defendant Heuermann's residence indicated a female individual belonging to mitochondrial haplogroup K1C2, which is the same mitochondrial haplogroup as the female hairs recovered from the 3 victims.
They think what happened here, and there's more description in the document, is that there was transfer, perhaps, of Heuermann's wife's hair on the tape used to either restrain or wrap up these victims. And the tape was found with the victims and the binding material that we talked about before, the camouflage burlap fabric. This appears to be a situation where the offender is using tape to wrap up the bodies and is inadvertently transferring hair from the woman he lives with, in this case his wife. They don't think the wife is involved in the murders. They think that her hair is being inadvertently transferred as a result of some of this activity happening at his home.
See, I was trying to explain that to my boyfriend. He was like, how would her hair get on something if she wasn't involved? And I said, it's the same way that when I'm over at your house for the evening or whatever, if I'm brushing my hair, some of my hair may end up on your pillow, your bathroom floor, or whatever. That doesn't mean I was involved in any nefarious activity that you may get after. And he's not, by the way. He's a good guy, not a serial killer, as far as I know. I said, that doesn't mean I had anything to do with it. It just means I was at your place. I know that there are going to be people who are like, oh my gosh, the wife is involved because why else would her hair be there? You shed hair and skin cells all the time. Just because your DNA is at someone's house or on someone's stuff does not mean that you were involved. And so I had to make sure I explained that to my boyfriend and to my parents.
I've done similar explanations for my family and friends as well. For what it's worth, the FBI had asked for my DNA and the DNA of my 2 brothers for elimination purposes because our DNA would have been inside my sister Kathy's car. The more DNA profiles you have for elimination purposes, the 3 Thomas brothers had a legitimate reason to be riding in my sister's car and leaving behind, as you said. We're shedding DNA, we're leaving hair behind. It just happens. Anyone that's ever cleaned their couch or car and found plenty of dog hair, there's plenty of people hair in there too.
I mean, it's interesting if you stop and think for a moment about the number of people that enter your house on any given day. Bill, this is especially true for you because you guys run an Airbnb. It's not just going to be your DNA and Pamela's and Oliver's that's there. It's going to be guests that appear and stay for the weekend or however long with you guys. It doesn't mean that those guests had anything to do with any crime that takes place there. It just means they were there as your guest. And I've had to explain that to people before. Just because your DNA is in a place, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're involved in a nefarious happening. We are going to go ahead and draw to a close here because my voice will not hold out for too terribly much longer reading this whole very long bail application. So we will continue for a 3rd episode discussing this bail application in the Long Island serial killer or LISK case. That is going to do it for this episode of Mind Over Murder. Please continue to tune in as we talk about the LISK killer. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mind Over Murder. We'll see you next time.
Mind Over Murder is a production of Absolute Zero and Another Dog Productions.
Our executive producers are Bill Thomas and Kristin Dilley.
Our logo art is by Pamela Arnois.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod.
Mind Over Murder is distributed in partnership with Crawlspace Media.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
You can also follow our page on the Colonial Parkway Murders on Facebook.
And finally, you can follow Bill Thomas on Twitter at BillThomas56.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder.